Hello, and welcome to my Principles of Information Security presentation by Max Henning. We'll start by going to Chapter 1, Intro to InfoSec. When I first took this course, I wasn't too sure about what InfoSec was and all the big key parts and roles that are in InfoSec. And now that we are here at the end of the course, I feel like I have a really nice grasp on every little piece that goes into it. Information security is the protection of the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets, whether in storage, processing, or transmission via the application of policy, education, training and awareness, and technology. Business data isn't in just one place anymore. There are many different areas of security, like physical and operations and communications and cyber and network security, that need to be taken care of correctly and made sure that it's not compromised. It's a very important part of any business, and it must be taken very seriously through education of proper practices and minimize risk before it even starts. Making sure that everyone in a company is a part of managing information and managing the security of the information is very integral to keeping everything safe. It's important to me because I have a new understanding and respect for everyone in the field and what they have to go through, and I might possibly would like to be a part of it one day because it's a very tough job and it looks like it's a very reputable job to want to get into and make sure that you're keeping businesses and people safe. Chapter 2, Compliance, Law and Ethics. Ethics and Education. What is being an ethical employee? You can learn from making judgments in fake situations before a real one happens, and use deterrence to show people how to behave in the workplace. There's ethics in every workplace, not just InfoSec, and learning about what is ethical and non-ethical is important to make a decision. Ethics is the standard of right and wrong based on thought. So when you are presented with a situation, you would like to act on the situation based on what you think is the most right. Opinions and rationalizations don't matter if it is illegal with whatever what you do. You can say, you thought to do one thing this whole time, but it doesn't matter if it's, illegal. You don't want to bring up to the law, I did something, but in the end it was illegal and unethical to do. It's important for any employee to be ready to make decisions as accurately, quickly, and ethically as possible to stay out of trouble from employers, customers, and even the law. This applies to me too in a liquor store setting. I work at a liquor store, so if I'm ever confronted with a customer who I believe I should not be serving, I am ethically and legally obliged to not serve them. So that's why this chapter really stuck out to me because I deal with it almost every day. So move on to Chapter 3, Governance and Strategic Planning for Security. InfoSec governance, InfoSec governance, risk management, and regulatory compliance, or GRC. It is everyone's job to stay compliant with InfoSec practices. It's not just a technical issue because every employee can and will play some part in keeping the company they work for safe and secure. It's a big umbrella of tasks and jobs to worry about. Bad governance and treating it like a technical issue can lead to huge compromises in data and negatively affect organization and customers. You must keep up with current issues and constantly evolve with the technology of the world. And InfoSec governance must be addressed at the highest levels of management because it's not just one person's job to keep the whole company safe. If you have a certain key code or you leave a certain door open, anyone can walk in and have access to data. This is important because bad governments can affect the entire organization and its customers. You really want to make sure that everyone is doing their part to keep their company safe. Chapter 4, Information Security Policy. Issue-specific security policy is an organizational policy that provides detailed, targeted guidance to instruct all members of the organization in the use of a resource such as one of its processes or technologies. It's important to address resources, update them regularly, and it defines the company's stance on an issue clearly and effectively. Policy is very important because it really defines what the company wants to achieve and really defines guidelines that take out the guesswork for its employees. If an employee has to make a decision based on a certain problem, you just check the policy and see what the company would like for you to do. It's important to follow and stay within policy so that you can't get in trouble in the event that something goes wrong. Policies remove guesswork, as I just said, as how to deal with using company related technology. You must follow the policy or deal with the consequences. Policy is there for a reason. It's there to keep the company safe and it's there to keep you, the employee, safe. So, if you're ever faced with a situation, you want to deal with it within policy and as ethically as possible. Chapter 5, Developing the Security Program. So, my major is computer science, but my minor is also education. So, this was a very important part of this chapter to me. Security Education, Training and Awareness, or SETA, a managerial program designed to improve the security of information assets by providing targeted knowledge, skills, and guidance for organizational employees. It will improve employee behavior and give information to members to report or where to report violations of policy, and it will enable the organization to hold employees accountable for the actions since they should know better. If an employee goes to a certain seminar that teaches them about, how to deal with certain attacks or how to close up their office at night or whatever where the seminar would be about, and then the employee goes and does it wrong, like we just recently had a discussion question about this. The employee should know better because they were taught it, and the company can get in trouble, but the employee will be used as an example of what not to do. It's incredibly important to make sure the policies and plans discussed are distributed and taught to employees so they can follow them and improve. Education is key to minimizing risk. Now, as we'll talk about soon, you can never totally fully get rid of risk, but if employees are educated as to how to deal with risk, you minimize it greatly. There's no point in having policies and making them if they aren't followed and known to all employees. So, through education, you teach employees, you teach administration how to deal with InfoSec. So, here we come to risk. Chapter 6, Risk Management, Identifying and Assessing Risk. Assessing threats. An evaluation of the threats to information assets, including a determination of their potential to endanger the organization. This comes down to knowing your enemy, ranking the level of threats, and you have to define many different questions to ask and worry about. You have to worry about actual threats, internal and external threats, and the highest probability of occurrence. It's important because as an employee for a company, you want to minimize risk as much as possible so that you stay out of trouble, stay within policy, and create less work for yourself. Do not be ignorant to what could happen and be prepared if it does. Going back to my current job at a liquor store, whenever we have a theft happen, we have, high cost liquor stolen sometimes, not too often. But there's a certain thing that has to get done. As soon as you notice something's off, you immediately have to notify a manager. The manager notifies our loss prevention office, and they check the cameras, and then an investigation begins into who the person is, what was stolen, and how they're going to deal with it. It's important to always know that these risks can happen at any time, and when it does happen, you have a plan as to what to do to deal with them. Chapter 7, Risk Management, Controlling Risk. So, as I just mentioned about the last chapter, we have transference, shifting risks to other areas or to outside entities. Everyone has a job to do, and the less that an employee has to worry about, the better. When everyone worries about one set job, less mistakes are made. Employees juggling so many responsibilities can lead to an increase in risk and that only harms the company. Delegating who does what to help out the betterment of the company is the best approach to controlling risk. In my work, whenever we have something go wrong, like a theft or an unruly customer, we immediately go over to our loss prevention office. They do not work specifically for the liquor store, but they're there to keep us safe. Because I'm always supposed to look out for if someone's stealing, like I just mentioned. If I notice it, I have to notify someone. But then it is the loss prevention's job to follow through and deal with whatever comes next so that I can deal with, my normal cashier and leveling duties. Controlling risk is the best way to stop it from happening. Chapter 8, Security Management Models. Now, security management models, such as access control models, are least privilege, need to know, and separation of duties. This was important to me because you want to keep information safe from outside strangers, which is as important as keeping it safe from employees. As we'll get to in chapter 11, you don't want to have an employee that has access to so much information that they can do whatever they want with it. So you have access control models that will allow an employee to have the least amount of information or only the amount of information that they need to know to complete their task. Such as if you were to call whoever handles your banking, they could see all your account information, excuse me, but then whatever they do with it next or don't do with it next is on them. They were hired for that reason. It's important to stay within company policy and only have access to what is necessary. Employees should not be able to see important customer information for any length of time or important company information for any length of time. So now we come to chapter 9, security management practices. I really like this. Internal benchmarking, an effort to improve information security practices by comparing an organization's current efforts against its past efforts. Involves reflecting and reviewing and ensuring that progress is made. Benchmarking makes sure a company is growing and evolving. Now, I know normal benchmarking involves comparing yourself to another organization that is like yours. However, internal benchmarking to me kind of means a little bit more because you want to show how you've grown through the past year and how you've adapted and evolved with the times. It's very important to change and reflect on how far you've come and what's ahead. In my opinion, it's better than normal benchmarking because each company is different, even though you might be dealing in the same line of work. Something that works for one company might not work for yours. It's important to make sure that a company is growing from its past and evolving with the technology. Companies should never use the exact same procedures and policies as when they first started operating. Attackers get smart. They learn what you're all about. They learn what you do, and they'll try to get around it to take advantage of you and your company. And it's good to, I mean, you could relate this to yourself as well. You want to take personal checklists of how you live your life and what you're doing to better it. Same thing with a company. Company wants to make sure they're not getting stale and make sure that they are staying up to date and doing their due diligence to make sure that their company is as safe as possible and that their customers are as safe as possible. Chapter 10, Planning for Contingencies. Contingency planning, or CP, the actions taken by senior management to specify the organization's efforts and actions if an adverse event becomes an incident or disaster. This involves response, recovery, continuity efforts, and business impact analysis. Now, of course, as we hear throughout all this chapter, Murphy's Law states anything that can go wrong will go wrong. We all understand this. Once a risk is calculated, you should have a plan on how to effectively deal with the risk. It's important to always have a backup plan and execute it exactly as defined. Risk is around us always, not even just at work. So making sure you always have some kind of plan in the event that there is a problem will better help you solve it. You don't want to run or be a part of a big company and just be ignorant to anything that can happen. anything can happen at any given time, no matter how wild or random or ridiculous you think it might be. There's still a risk of it, and it still could happen. I know just recently in my own house, in my basement, we had a water pipe leak, and it was leaking for a few days, and I didn't notice it until my carpet was wet. So I immediately ran over and turned off the water line to the entire house until we could get a plumber because I discovered the leak at nighttime. But that was still a plan. I knew that I could turn off the water to stop the leak from getting any worse than it already was. Chapter 11, Personnel and Security. So I mentioned this a few chapters back. Employment policies and practices involve hiring, job descriptions, interviews, background checks, security checks, and certifications. A big job like information security doesn't want just anyone to work for them. And if you were hired, it's a full time job being the best you can be to keep up the company's image. Your actions will reflect on your employer. This is too true for someone like me who has sort of aspirations to become a teacher one day. You're always defined as you have a status to uphold. You have a image you have to give off. Some people hold teachers in a very high and regarded light, and you don't want to do anything wrong to diminish from that. Which is why when you're hired, no matter where you are, you get background checks are done. You have to go through an interview. You have to go through the hiring process. Everyone goes through this, which is why this was important to me in this chapter. Not just anyone can get hired for InfoSec. You have to be a well-rounded and moral person, as well as when dealing with important information and the security of others' information. They want to make sure that you have the right certifications and qualifications, and you're also just a good person, or they at least see you as a good person in order to let you have access to such information about their company and its customers. And then lastly, we get to chapter 12, protection mechanisms. Access controls and biometrics have three key factors: something a person knows, something a person has, and something a person can produce. Keeping information safe by doing something only you can do is the best way to protect it. And nowadays, dual factor authorization is becoming the normal way of allowing access to data, as passwords are too easy nowadays to get around when compared to fingerprint scanning or having a personal device. It is very important to set up as many different ways of authorization as possible. I know with my Google account, I have it set up to where if a new device wants to access my Google account, it sends a message pop up on my phone that asks me if I know what it is, who it is, where it is, every information about it, and if I would like to allow them to do it. Now that's something I have. I have my phone on me, well, most times, and that allows me to access my Google account from a new device. Hopefully someone else that's not me doesn't try to do that. But if they do, I can just deny it from my phone and they won't have access to it again. Passwords are safe. I know sometimes on Google Chrome, if you need to make a new password, Google Chrome is the internet browser, it will give you password suggestions and then store them in its browser. And the password suggestion is some alphanumeric password that they just generated off the whim right there. I don't usually like to do that because it's still stored in the browser, and I'm sure if anyone wanted to get that kind of information, they would go to any length to do it. But I mean, nowadays, phones and accounts have fingerprint scanners set up to it. Phones, so a lot of smartphones have fingerprint scanners. And if you would like to access your bank account information, the app on the smartphone will ask for fingerprint authentication. And say, your mom or your family member tries to get into your bank account, it's not your fingerprint, so you don't get access to it. And that's something a person can produce. You can produce a fingerprint, which is a lot harder than just having a person guess a password or eventually get to a password. These things are a part of our lives, and it was important to me in this chapter because it's not going anywhere, and it is a big facet of information security as to how you will keep information secure. I know they also talk about encryption in this chapter, which is also really big for sending and receiving and reading information. So, in the conclusion of this PowerPoint presentation, I wanted to say thank you. I did enjoy this course. I learned a lot more than I thought I would. I really didn't understand or know much about information security in the workplace, and now I feel like I have a very nice understanding of it. I learned a lot of important stuff this semester that I hope to take with me and apply to my life, and maybe, hopefully, my job. So, thank you.